When I reviewed Driveclub when it first came out, I wasn't impressed at all, and if you saw my review, you probably remember me saying lots of negative things about the game because I just felt like it was boring and it didn't particularly handle well and I didn't think it looked all that great. But now we have the PS Plus free version, which has been out only for a short while and it has taken a really long time to come out. And the question is it still the same game? Is it worthwhile downloading even though it's free? And should you guys commit any time to this? So I almost didn't download and play this. I was so disappointed with Driveclub initially that I thought that there really isn't all that much that they could do to improve this game. And how wrong I was. This is the game that should have shipped initially. It seems like a huge amount of work has gone into the game on all different levels and it has brought it up to a standard in which I think the original game should have been. Does it change the game into the best racing game of all time? Definitely not, and I would still pick Project Cars over this if I had to. But I've sunk a fair few hours into the free version and I have to say I've enjoyed pretty much all of it. I think it's unfortunate because I think if Driveclub was released in this state originally, this game would have done so much better. For starters, the visuals I think are much improved. The weather effects which were added a short time later make a massive difference to the way this game looks and plays. The storms, for instance, are absolutely spectacular and the tracks look awesome when they have puddles of water all over them. I originally said that I was underwhelmed by the game's presentation, and I think this is pretty much all it needed, just a little bit of flair, something to separate itself from its peers. Another issue I had with the original game was the car roster. It wasn't really the size that I was disappointed with, it was just the diversity. All of the cars seemed to be European, and it just didn't feel like there was that much choice. Well, the car roster seems to be absolutely gigantic now. I have no idea how many vehicles are in it, but there's a huge amount of different stuff, and there's Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and there's even some Japanese cars if you're willing to pay for them. That's definitely a big issue I think with this game, is that a lot of the content is locked behind DLC, which is really disappointing because if you want to have a complete car roster and you want to drive the Lamborghinis or the Nissan Skylines, you're going to have to fork out extra money. Also in the PS Plus version, there's probably about 80% of the cars, if not more, that you can't drive. So you can still see them, but you can see that they're locked to the full version. Now obviously this is there as an incentive for you to purchase the full version, but it is pretty depressing to see how many vehicles you can actually drive is quite limited. In terms of gameplay, I feel like the cars feel much better to drive. I feel like they're more responsive, that they're a little bit sharper, that they feel like they're actually on the road. They're still a little bit floaty for my liking, and I don't feel like there's that much difference between each version. Just some cars turn in a little bit better, some brake a bit better, and obviously you have the difference of speed. But in a game like Project Cars, each car seems to have its own personality, and you have to spend a bit of time with each car to be able to use it properly. I feel like in this game, once you get over the initial hurdle of the speed difference from the previous car you were driving, there isn't really that much to learn. But I guess because this game isn't a true sim, that's not really a big deal. It sits somewhere between arcade and sim, and that's really fine for me. I feel like overall it is enjoyable to drive these cars. Now the main difference between this free version of the game and the full game, besides the roster of cars, is that you don't have the freedom of the main game. You can't just pick a car and pick a country to race in and pick a track and just go. Basically you only have a handful of models that you can choose from, and you can only race on tracks from India, unless of course you're racing in specific modes, which is kind of like a taster for the main game. So although you can't drive every single car on any track that you like, there are some events which will allow you to drive vehicles which are otherwise locked. And although this can be quite frustrating because of how limited it is, I think it's a clever way to do it, and it definitely feels like there's a decent amount of stuff to see and do in this version. There's a decent amount of modes to choose from, and you've also got online, which from my testing seemed to be okay. I had some races which were really solid with no problems at all, but then there were some other races which, well, weren't really all that good. And that brings me to the issues which I still have with Driveclub. First and foremost for me is the audio. While some cars sound great, some other cars sound really flat and muted. Like for instance the Ferrari F430 just doesn't sound right. Now you can go into the options and increase the car volume, and you can also change the volume, so from the inside of the car you can actually listen to the outside sound and vice versa, which I think is a nice touch. But for some cars like the Mini, this just doesn't seem to make a difference. Damage is also another area which I think this game falls flat quite badly. If damage wasn't in the game at all, I guess it would be weird, but it feels like you can crash into a wall at 150 kilometers an hour and just break the headlamp and get a few scratches, and this feels like only a slight upgrade from a game like Gran Turismo. The last thing, which is still an issue from when I first reviewed this game, is the AI. The rubber banding is still terrible. Most of the time the cars race in a pack, And it seems like cars are always glued to you, so if you manage to overtake a car, it will suddenly sit on your gearbox for the rest of the race. And if you spin out or crash, it seems like it's really easy to catch the cars, but once you catch them, they suddenly get back up to speed. This doesn't feel very realistic, and I still don't think it's fun to race other vehicles, and I definitely still prefer the time attack or time trial modes. So, in conclusion, should you download the free version of Driveclub for the PS4? I mean, why not? It's free, right? I mean, if you've got the space on your hard drive, there's really no reason not to. If you were thinking about picking this game up and you're unsure about how it played, this is basically like a glorified extended demo. I've definitely had some fun with the PS Plus version, and if I had a little bit more time and I hadn't bought Project Cars, then I probably would invest some money into this game. In Australia, it's only about $40 to jump to the full version, so that's really not all that much money. So that's my thoughts on Driveclub as it is at the moment. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comment section below. But otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later.